Time, time, creation. Zambia is to thee, all strong and free. Before we get seated, Andrew Simutinta, Law Association Chairperson, please could you come and give us a prayer?
Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity here. Today, I want to focus more and expect the best. Wait for all of the leaders and for the leaders that 2 hours to this competition.
Amen. You can all be seated now. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Lusaka Provincial Rounds of the Youth Voices on Climate and Environment and Justice Debate Series. I'd like to welcome you all to this debate series. And I know that most of us do know what we're here to do, is that we're here to engage in a battle of the minds of an issue that is important to us, which is the environment. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Christine Jongo, and I'm your moderator for today's session. Without any further ado, I would like to invite a man that is like a father, a grandfather to most of us here at the University of Lusaka. This man is a dedicated advocate for student success. Please put your hands together as I welcome Dr. Lumbwe, the Deputy Dean of Students. Sorry?
Speak at the podium.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Stand behind the podium. I don't like that. Thank you. I would like to begin by welcoming each and every one of you who has come to attend this important event, and special welcome will be given to those of our visitors from the University of Zambia. And thank you. I would like to use our University of Lusaka way of welcoming visitors and all the important guests who have come to join us and have sponsored this program, as well as ZNBC Evergreen to come and pick on this program. I would like the University of Lusaka students, please give them a round of applause in welcome. Thank you. You are all most welcome to this campus, Leopards Hill campus of the University of Lusaka, where the School of Law resides. Now, I would like to begin by making note that this event is a very important event, and for me, I look at it as a means of transporting and transposing and also creating a cross-pollination of ideas between young, vibrant, good-looking students who come to share knowledge knowledge amongst themselves, develop themselves, and also, most importantly, create solutions for this mighty country, Zambia. And I would like to say that I cannot emphasize more importantly on this event because it has been a journey that has started from very long time ago. It's something that we used to talk about when I was a young boy, but it wasn't taken seriously. Climate change and all these issues that involve our environment. We never took that seriously, but now we see the effects. Starting from 2007, I was teaching in Sweden, Stockholm, and I found young children in the central street talking about climate change. They were small children, and I didn't value that. I would look and say, what are they saying? First of all, they were speaking in Swansea, so I had to work around interpreting what they were saying. But what was important was they were actually talking about the effects of climate change in Africa, our own country. And it pleases me to find that I have young students who are from this part of Africa, which is Zambia, and they are talking about this issue, creating legislation in terms of environment regulation and change, which is very good, and I would encourage that. Most importantly, I would also like you to use this as an avenue and opportunity to interact with each other. After the debate, you can chat and network and share ideas. But also, in summary, this event is a knowledge sharing, but it is going to be done in a more exciting way and not a classroom situation. You are going to debate. Some will be proposing, some will be opposing, some will be giving different views. At the end of the day, we'll have a panel of judges. They'll give their own results on who they feel is the greatest. And I would wish you all the best, God's blessings, and may the best win. You are all welcome, and I launch this project, and the debate is officially open. Thank you very much. You want me to say so, Sana?
Okay. Dr. Lumbe said we should interact. Mighty Unza, are you in the house? Mighty UNILUS, Mighty UNILUS. Okay. So next up, we're going to hear from someone who's at the heart of this important initiative, the project manager of SR for ERZ, Mr. Vuyo Mapango, is going to give us a brief overview of what this initiative is all about. Please put your hands together as Mr. Vuyo comes to the stage.
Good morning. It's a great honor to be here this morning. The Deputy Dean of Students, thank you so much for that welcoming remark. And all faculty members from the University of Lusaka, faculty members from the University of Zambia, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear young people. I thought you'd shout. Yeah. With funding from the European Union, the Strengthening Respect for Environmental Rights project is implemented by HIVOS in partnership with the Center for Environment Justice, the Zambia Institute of Environmental and the Zambia Institute of Environmental Management. This event has also been co-financed by the Voices for a Just Climate Action VCA, with technical support from Transparency International. As part of its policy and advocacy strategy, the project works to engage and influence duty bearers, including government institutions and policymakers, to advance and enforce laws that uphold and protect environmental rights. To strengthen this process, the project trains community opinion leaders, including traditional authorities and environmental activists, equipping them with knowledge and tools to advocate for environmental justice. Through this particular debate series, for example, the Youth Voices for Climate and Environment Justice, a journey that began on the Copper Belt with 2 universities, the Voices for Just Climate Action and the Strengthening Respect for Environmental Rights project are collaborating to elevate young voices and to push the agenda of environmental justice through university student engagement and related initiatives. The series is an inter-university debate that is offering young people, students, to engage and discuss pressing environmental challenges, including pollution, mining, corruption, and Zambia's environmental regulatory framework, while promoting sustainable resource management. As project lead, as project manager, representing the consortium this morning, I want to say thank you to our debaters. These are students that have dedicated time to this discourse. I want to say thank you to the 2 universities for accepting to participate in this debate and for willing to submit your students to participate in this event. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to the University of Lusaka also for willing to host us. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Okay, so we're not wasting time. We're getting right into it. We're going against UNZA, UNILUS. Get ready, get ready. I hope you're ready. So right now we're heading into the formal debates, and I have to step down and call upon Mr. Ali Kaunda, the project coordinator, who's going to take us over the next session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, we need some more energy. Before we begin the formal debate series, I think we need some energy. I believe we have representation from both UNILUS and UNZA, isn't it? So I want to hear that energy for the people that are supporting. I believe that you were called upon so that you can offer that support, isn't it? Aye. Viva Data Viva!
Viva!
Viva Data Viva! Viva Moma Viva! Viva Moma Viva! Viva Monku Viva! Better. Okay. So we want it to be interactive, but of course we are going into a very formal setup now, where we're going into the debate session, which is a very important debate. Buyo did mention in his speech to talk about the relevance of this debate. This debate is not about who's winning, who's losing. This debate is not about who's the best, who's not. I want all of us in the House to keep this in mind, that when we look at the motion for the day, we should keep in mind that we are adding value to what Zambia is going to look like in the future, what Zambia will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Whatever is going to be debated here is something of national interest. We are looking at environmental issues, and these are critical issues. And As you are aware, we are live streaming this event, and every point is going to be heard by relevant decision makers. So as we now transition into the formal setup, I would firstly want to emphasize that if you want to give morale or motivation to your team, you can do so respectively. Are we okay with that? Yeah? You know the morale I'm talking about, especially people that watch soccer. You know the morale that soccer fans give to the soccer players, correct? So you can give that support, but of course in a respective manner. So we now enter into the formal setup of this event, and allow me to say good morning once again to the esteemed judges, first of all, and distinguished guests, and our vibrant debaters who we're going to meet shortly. On behalf of the Center for Environment Justice and our implementing partners who are GIVOS, our lead partner, as well as Zambia Institute of Environmental Management and our technical partner, Transparency International Zambia. I would like to warmly welcome everyone to the Lusaka round of the Youth for Climate and Environmental Justice debate, which is proudly taking place right here at the University of Lusaka Leopards campus. So my name is Ali Kaunda, and I have the honor of serving as your chairperson for today's session. Before I go any further, I would like to, first of all, introduce the panelists. So we will begin with the hosting institution, who are UNILUS. So we can just give a round of applause to the UNILUS team to take up this. Okay. Then we'll also give a round of applause to the UNZA team who will take up this place. Next up, we'll introduce our judges. So we have a panel of judges, and these are experts under the environment field. They will introduce themselves at the end of the session, but for now, we can just put our hands together for the panel of judges as they take up their space. Then we can also put our hands together for Mr. Vuyo and Madam Daliso, who are going to help us with timekeeping to ensure there's no bias. So we can put our hands together. And also, we have a good Samaritan who's going to help us to pass on evidence to the judges, the panel of judges. And this is a daughter of UNILUS, who is our good Samaritan. So she also deserves an applause, isn't it? Kindly give a round of applause to Asiatu. Okay. Does she deserve a viva mama viva? Uh-huh. Okay. So, as it is a formal debate, we are looking at 2 points of views on emotion. And the motion states, as I quote, Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental regulatory and legal framework. I repeat, Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental regulatory and legal framework. So the proposing team is the University of Lusaka, and the opposing team is the University of Zambia. Before I proceed, can we just clarify if that is the information we have? Otherwise, we'll have both teams opposing or both teams proposing, and we won't have a debate today. So, UNILUS, you are the proposing team. Kindly clarify if you are aware that you are the proposing team. Okay. UNZA, you are the opposing team. Kindly clarify if you are the opposing team. Okay, we are good to go. I will now go into the guidelines for our session. They are very important session. So today's debate follows a modified parliamentary format with evidence-based criteria. What this simply means is that the speakers are going to bring out their case and they will provide some form of evidence. So let me briefly explain in detail the structure. We will have a total of 8 speakers, 4 from UNZA, 4 from UNILUS. And each speaker will have exactly 7 minutes to speak. Time will be strictly monitored. We have our timekeepers. So in case we feel time is not being monitored well, we know who to yell at, right? And regarding points of information, the first speakers are allowed 1 disruption. That is a point of information. Second and third speakers may take up to 2 points of information. And the final speakers, who are the 4th speakers from each team, will not receive any point of information. They are to deliver their remarks without interruption. Points of information may only be offered after the first minute and before the last minute of each speech. So this is for the judges to take note as well as the timekeepers. If accepted, the speaker offering the point of information has no more than 20 seconds to give the point of information. Please remember, it is entirely up to the speaker to accept or decline a point of information. Not the moderator, but you, the speaker, to accept or decline. Are we clear on that? Okay. The judges will be scoring each speaker based on 4 criteria. And for the benefit of the audience as well, these are the 4 criteria that are going to determine who the winners are going to be for the day. So number 1 will be on content out of 40 points. Content meaning the substance in the argument. Secondly, style and delivery. This will be out of 30 points. The use of evidence is out of 20 points. And engagement and rebuttal out of 10 points. So those rules being given, just to also clarify, at the end of the session, depending on how it goes, we will ask both teams if there will be need to have a 3-minute final rebuttal after the first speaker. Only if both parties agree. Why are we bringing this into perspective now? It is because our debate aims to bring out research-based data. And so if the 7 minutes is less and there's 10 points that were not brought out, we want to give that opportunity to have each team to bring out their points. However, if one or both parties decide to decline the final rebuttal round, then we'll call it quits and we'll leave everything to the judges. Fair enough? Fair enough? I can't hear you. Fair enough? Okay. This being said, we are ready to have our debate in session, which is being live streamed on our social media platforms, Transparency International Zambia page, Center for Environment Justice page, HIVO's page. And so I will call on the first speaker from the proposing side. Okay, there's a point of clarification. Yes. You can.
All right.
Okay, so for the sake of timing, we want to be as transparent as possible. So you can do that. You can time yourself, and when you time yourself and it is not tallying with the timekeepers, you can give a signal. Okay. So without further ado, allow me to call on the first speaker from the proposing side, University of Lusaka, and I hope I'll get the name correctly. Please do mention your name once you get on stage, but sorry, actually, I think yeah, it should be in last. Okay, so that's well, what I have is I don't think that is I don't think you're Lloyd. You are Lloyd. Oh, okay, okay. So okay, pardon me for that. So put your hands together for Lloyd Ndemulungila. I think yes, Lloyd Ndemulungila. Set up your stage. When ready to speak, give a cue to the timekeepers and the time begins. Take your time.
I will begin in 3, 2, 1. I greet you all in the name of debate. May all protocols be highly observed. As the proposing government, we are strongly affirming today's motion that reads, Zambia has well-defined and strong environmental, regulatory, and legal framework. The key terminologies in today's motion are well-defined, strong environmental, regulatory, and legal framework. Allow me to define the key terminologies. Well-defined means something that is clear, comprehensive, and content and scope. Strong, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, it means to be able to perform a specific function well and powerfully. As for strong laws, these are laws that are binding, that compels compliance and adapts to challenges, while withstanding real-world pressure and maintaining full functionality. For the Zambian environmental, regulatory, and legal framework to prove that it is strong and robust, it has to meet the 3 interlocking pillars, which are enforceability, adaptability, and accessibility. Legal frameworks, these are statutory foundations, which includes acts, policies, regulations, institutions, and international treaties that establish environmental rights, duties, and standards. We have an example of the Constitution of Zambia, Article 255 of the Laws of Zambia, which speaks on the right to clean water, as well as we have the Environmental Management Act of 2011, amongst all others. Regulatory framework, these are institutions and mechanisms that implement and enforce laws which govern how entities should and should not interact with the environment. So what is the status quo of Zambia currently? Zambia possesses a comprehensive and well-articulated environmental legal framework and anchored by laws such as the Environmental Management Act of 2011, the Forest Act of 2015, the Green Economy and Climate Change Act of 2024, the Natural Resources Act of 1970, amongst many more others. Zambia as well stands and identifies as a signatory nation under the Rio Declaration, specifically Principle 2 under state responsibility, which enables Zambia to be an accountable nation in terms of maintaining environmental principles as at large. My second speaker will come and further elaborate on that fact and draw the House into more evidence. The proposing government aims to show that this framework that is established meets its mandate and it falls within the three interlocking pillars that I've earlier stated. Now, allow me to dispel the misconceptions immediately, House at large. Let us take a look at how this framework is comprehensive in nature. This framework covers and addresses most, if not all, aspects of the environment, providing guidelines on how entities should and should not interact with the environment. It provides enforcement mechanisms for sanctions for when these requirements are not complied with, and Zambia's framework, as I've earlier stated, is anchored in the Environmental Management Act of 2011, which provides for integrated environmental management and the protection and conservation of the environment and sustainable management and use of natural resources. It further mandates environmental impact assessments for all major projects, preempting claims of gas house at large. The Zambia Environmental Management Agency, ZEMA, operationalizes this with legally binding enforcement powers, clearly showing that there's no ambiguity in this legal framework house at large. Critics might come here and state that these laws are just on paper. These laws are theoretical. They're not practical. They're not being put out there into the public house at large. But we are proving you otherwise. Zambia embeds sustainability in all its sectors. Let me give you an example of the Forestry Act of 2015 that I mentioned earlier. It combats illegal logging, and in 2017, Zambia imposed a total ban on mukula harvesting and export, using Section 51 and 52 on regulations on forest produce. The Mukula case proves that Zambia's Forestry Act is not merely theoretical. It actively shapes conservation efforts. Furthermore, mining 20% of GDP is bound by the Mines and Minerals Development Act of 2015, Section 6 and Section 12, requiring environmental bonds before operations begin. This is showing that it is aligning with the motion's claim that this framework, this legal framework, is well-defined, it is strong, and it is robust, House at large. As it pertains to this framework being strong, let us look at the Zambia Environmental Management Agencies, which prosecutes entities which do not comply with the principles stated in this legal framework. This will also be further elaborated by my second speaker, who will draw the House in evidence and clutch these facts together for the House. This framework, furthermore, provides accountability mechanisms. What do we mean by this? As we stand here, each and everybody in this House identifies as a local standard house at large. They're able to take these agencies to court when transparency and accountability is not met, house at large. Denied. People can inquire for transparency. People can inquire for accountability. And when these agencies do not comply with these principles, house at large, they can be held accountable. And they are also able to appeal for decisions to ensure that these laws are accessible to the public. Taken.
Mentioned the existence of SEMA, was how it uses the law. We haven't really given us a case on how this enforcement looks like.
Thank you very much for your POI, Speaker. As I earlier stated, reference to the case that I gave, as I earlier stated on the case that I've earlier stated, that the Mukula case that I gave, it has proven that these bans have been imposed on the public and enforcement mechanisms have been given. Finally, this legal framework proves that adaptability. Yes, challenges do persist. No nation is flawless, but strong does not mean perfect. It means that Zambia's laws are evolving. New laws are being amended day by day, house at large. And Constitutional Article 255 that I've stated further ensuring citizens' rights to clean environment, empowering judicial oversight. In conclusion, Zambia's frameworks are structurally sound, adaptively enforced, and globally respected. Quite possibly, the law has done its part. Now it calls us to do ours, House at Large. I thank you, and I officially open the debate.
I hope we are paying attention. The points are very vivid and very clear. And apologies that the point of information that was given wasn't probably not on the microphone, but I think that has been taken care of now. So that's a good way of starting. So without wasting time, we are now going to have the first speaker from the opposing side, from UNZA, who's Mr. Alex. So you can give a cue, you set up your table, give a cue to the timekeepers when you're ready to speak.
In its distinct order of seniority or protocol is highly observed. My fellow countrymen, women, the youth, panel. This session's debate revolves around the motion which states, and I quote, Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental, regulatory, and legal framework, end of quote. Ideally, the motion is saying that Zambia has a clearly articulated, robust system of laws and policies which are designed to govern and protect the natural environment through enforceable laws. I applaud opening government for the definitions and everything they gave us. We strongly agree with the definitions, so we're just going to ride on them and just carry on with the debate. But I'm going to engage with some of what Prime Minister told us. First of all, Prime Minister tells us that the current laws and regulations compel compliance while withstanding change and adaptability. And she also tells us that there are new laws that are being amended. The big question mark with that statement in and of itself is that she's telling us that there are new laws that are coming up and that new laws are being amended, but she's quoting laws from 1997 and quoting laws from 2015 when we're in 2025. My fellow countrymen, women, the youth panel, that in and of itself is a flaw, because why are you giving us outdated laws that are not doing anything? We've been complaining for so long about environmental regulations. There's so much that is happening. There's so much that is not changing. There's environmental pollution that is going on. And as a country, as opposition, we are tired, and we're here to present this case to you and tell you that we do not believe that Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental, regulatory, and legal framework, and we say so for reasons that we are going to present. Firstly, let us set some parameters, because Prime Minister failed to give us parameters and give us an overview of what we're supposed to talk about. First of all, when we talk about the environment, what are we talking about exactly? As opposition, we're here to tell you that we're not limiting the environment to talk about any specific part of it, but we're broadening it and talking about the whole environment as a whole. We talk about the natural part of the environment, which consists of living and non-living things. And we also talk about the artificial environment, which talks about infrastructure and industrial areas. Now that we have that understanding of the environment, let us take a moment to appreciate exactly what the problems are that are affecting our environment before we talk about how exactly we are not protecting it with the laws that we have. We have issues like pollution. We have issues like air pollution, where there's vehicle emissions, people who are smoking charcoal, burning industrial smoke. We've got water pollution, industrial waste. We've got land pollution by dump sites, landfills, deforestation, chemical pesticides. And these are all just primary examples of exactly how our environment is being harmed. Now that we understand the position where we are, now that we understand what we are talking about, let us give you exactly the reasons why we think, why we know actually for a fact that we do not have the laws that support our environment. First of all, according to status quo, as of today, 8th August 2025, whatever laws or policies that exist do not properly engage with the issues that have been raised, the issues of pollution, the issues of water contamination. We'll talk about this, for example. Chicken. Effective? Let me tell you why it's not effective. First of all, we've got WCP Zambia who is telling us that illegal timber logging is one of the Samaritan passes on to the judges. They talked about how there's an environmental policy that is preventing logging, but WCP is telling us that it is one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment. That in and of itself is a flaw in government's argument. And if they're basing their argument entirely on that fantasy, then I can tell you that whatever they have to say is flawed and their argument is false. Secondly, let's talk about land pollution. We've got lead poisoning in Kabwe. According to Transparency International Zambia, they've talked about how Kabwe's children are still suffering as a result of lead poisoning, which was done in the past. If they've told us that their laws and systems are so robust and they're effective from the past, when the lead poisoning happened, and they're giving us laws from 1997, that in and of itself tells you that from then, when their laws were implemented and people are still suffering, how exactly is that effective? And when we tell you that it is not effective in that aspect, why are they not changing anything? They're busy telling us that there's change that is coming. Government has told us that there are new laws that are being implemented and all that, but we are seeing that people are still suffering from things that happened in the old days. May the Good Samaritan pass this on to the judges for further clarity. It is important for us to look at the point which is on the Forestry Act of 2015. Prime Minister passionately talked about this, and she told us that it is effective, it is working well, but my fellow countrymen, women, the youth panel, it is important for you to acknowledge the fact that the Zambia Forestry Act of 2015 defines what legal and illegal logging is, but it lacks strict reforestation quotas. What this means is that if someone goes there, cuts trees for logging, they're going to be able to tell, is that legal or is it not legal? But they're not going to provide any solution for the reforestation of those trees that were cut down, meaning that they do not care about the reforming of the environment that has been damaged. They care about giving you a license to cut down trees, but they don't care about what happens after those trees are cut, because they're not providing us with a solution of planting new trees after those are cut down. And that is well emphasized by looking at an article quoted from the Transparency International Zambia website, which talks about the forestry issues. It reads, and I quote, "People dump everywhere, the environment is polluted. This is both a matter of education and awareness, but also of planning and governance. Local authorities should be more active in managing waste, but also in monitoring environmental crimes and holding wrongdoers accountable. People are supposed to pay penalties, but they don't. It can't be a matter of corruption. It can be a matter of corruption or unwillingness or inability to prosecute wrongdoers. Our local authorities have laws, bylaws, which are often ignored. This has an impact on the citizens." Countrymen, women, the youth panel. This article is telling us that there's so many flaws and the government is completely ignoring the part that they have to play in people's compliance. They're telling us that people are complying with the rules and they're following all the regulations and that the laws are beneficial and all that. But all the evidence we're seeing today that we are giving you as side opposition is counterfact, and we do not agree with the point that they stand with. May the Good Samaritan pass this on to the judges for further clarification. As opposing delegation, we're here to give you a strong understanding of why these laws are not working, because we want to build an environment where we do actually care and we do sort out things that are negative about our environment. Another thing that you need to understand is that the current law system has weak enforcement. We talk about no strict penalties that would deter would-be offenders. Of course, we're going to talk about fines and sanctions or whatever, but that in and of itself is weak because the legal system is flawed, and there's also evidence that suggests that there's a clause actually which provides a minister the ability to override what ZEMA says. What exactly do I mean when I say that? It means if I go to ZEMA and ask for a license to maybe cut down trees, ZEMA declines my request, I can go to a minister, bribe him perhaps, and ask for a license, and he is going, 30 seconds to conclude, please. Thank you. What that implies is that a minister is able to give you a license without actually following the regulations that ZEMA has set up. That in and of itself is a flaw in the law, and we are telling you that that is a negative thing for everything that the government is standing for. We, as opposition, want to protect our environment. We want you to understand that these laws are not doing any good, and we need to reform them and get in a place where our environment is well protected. With that said, God bless you. God bless the great Republic of Zambia. May this be passed on to the judges. I I rest my case.
Very interesting, right? Before I continue, let me just commend the crowd. I think we're doing a good job without the instructions for snapping, as opposed to clapping when the speaker is speaking, is highly commendable. But to commend you, I'll need you to clap for yourselves. Thank you. So I hope we are hearing the submissions from the panelists, and it's only getting deeper and deeper. And just as a reminder, now we are going into the second and third speakers, where we have 2 points of information to be called out, and as per instruction, the speaker has the right to decline or to accept the point of information. However, for the sake of transparency, it's more beneficial to accept because it will be taken into account by the judges, but it is up to your discretion. Moving forward, we go to the second speakers. The first speakers have given us a tone, and we'll begin with the proposing side, UNILUS. And again, please do mention your name once you come on stage. The name I have is Don Kabondo. Please put your hands together for the second speaker from the proposing side, UNILUS, Don Kabondo.
I will start in 3, 2, 1. Members of the House, may all protocol be highly observed. Honorable judges, the test of this motion is a strong legal framework. It's not whether every company complies voluntarily. No nation achieves that. This test is whether the system detects violations, punishes offenders, and improves over time. The first speaker has mistaken the motion as strong meaning perfect, but strong isn't perfect. As my first speaker has said, strong means effective and not imperfection, and no law is flawless. Persistence is what stands. Let me begin by highlighting that this environmental, regulatory, and legal framework strength begins by its surgical precision. Members of the House, the Environmental Management Act of 2011 didn't merely echo international standards, it broke new ground. It established a specialized environmental tribunal. The EMA number 12 of 2011 went on to establish the Zambian Environmental Management Agency. This provides for mandatory environmental assessments, pollution prevention and control, accepted. Okay, I will now repeat how I started my speech. I had addressed the honorable judges to say, no nation achieves a perfect system. This system detects violations, punishes offenders, and improves over time. And that is the definition of effective, that is the definition of strong. Allow me to proceed. Adaptive governance. A strong system must evolve, and this is what Zambia does. A strong legal system isn't judged by never failing, but by how it recovers when tested. When mine declined, when mining effluent poisoned the Kafue River in 2025, the response was swift.
Zima and the Zambia Air Force deployed 250 tons of lime within days, further showing institutional muscle memory for accountability declined. Zambian Monitor reported the pollution was contained under Sino metals held accountable. This is not theory. This is governance in motion. This is law with teeth. Accepted. Again, I will repeat what I initially said, that no system is perfect as long as it tries to show its effectiveness. Let me go on to say that the Zambian Environmental Management Agency doesn't act on its own. It has different institutions such as WOMA, Department of National Park and Wildlife, these provide structure and coordination in managing the country's natural resources and promoting sustainable practices. Let me proceed. In 2013, Zima revoked Mwembeshi's recovery resources license to mine in the Lower Zambezi National Park. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was a strategic pivot to protect biodiversity. Let me go on to speak of the system's judicial strength and demonstrated efficacy. Our system doesn't just interpret the law, they enforce it with precision. Honorable judges, in Kangwa and others versus Zima 2014, the Supreme Court ruled that Zima's approval of a project without proper publication consultation violated the law. And let me specifically quote the statutory instrument number 28 of 1997, Regulation 10, subsection 1. The environmental precision is entrenched in Zambia's supreme law. The Constitution of Zambian Environment affirms environmental rights and imposes obligations on the state. This provision establish both justifiable rights and state duties, creating a constitutional basis for environmental law. Let me proceed to say, in 2023, the Supreme Court upheld the cancellation of Mwembeshi's resource license, being quoted as the most significant conservation victory in a decade. Let me go on to say that there may be whispers of corruption. Yes, corruption exists. The proposition isn't denying that. But here the difference is Zambia's framework is built to detect it, expose it, and correct it. EMA and its subsidiary legislation specifically states this. Again, I will refer to statutory instrument number 28 of 1997. Let me go on to talk about how the provision was used in the Kangwa case to challenge industrial expansion. EMA Section 4.3, Part 1, grants local standard to any citizen, confirming that any person may sue for damages arising from an act or omission that contravenes the EMA. You see, the opposition is arguing that there might be challenges that this country is facing. But let me state that even the sitting members of the opposition have the local standard and the rights to go straight to the Zambian Environmental Management Agency to address their problems and reasonings on these challenges. Let me go on to talk about how Zambia's environmental efforts are not left to chance. They're actively managed by a key institution with varied responsibilities. These provide structure and coordination in managing the natural resources and promoting sustainable practices. Also accessibility. This isn't just enforcement, ladies and gentlemen, it's democratized enforcement. Our framework reflects the Rio Declaration Act and its principles. Public participation, access to justice, and enforceable legislation. Zambia didn't just sign the declaration, it built a system that lives up to it. It furthermore went on to domesticate it. Allow me to cite Section 2 under Project Briefs that allows for public views to be taken into account. Members of the House, these are enforceable rights. And Zambia's alignment with the Rio Declaration means it is not only guided by international norms, but furthermore held accountable by the global community. With 15 targeted environmental acts, our legal architecture is not vague. It is codified, it is clear, it is actionable. Zima's review of 652 projects in 2023 shows a system that is active, efficient, and accessible. Let me go on to say, honorable judges, the test isn't whether the legal framework isn't whether the test isn't sorry the test of a strong legal framework isn't whether every company complies voluntarily. No nation achieves that. The test is whether the system detects violations, punishes offenders, and improves over time. And this is a true definition of well-defined and strong. Zambia's framework doesn't just meet the standard, ladies and gentlemen, it sets it. And that's why this House must affirm. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the second speaker from UNILUS. And we are going to now move on to the second speaker from UNZA. Please do mention your name for the sake of the judges. Remember, we are addressing the judges and for the benefit of the audience. So please do mention your name. And when you're ready, you can just give a cue.
Now, members of the House, when it pertains to the environment, it is very crucial because each and every single Zambian has a mutual interest in this environment. And it is very fundamental, cardinal, that the laws, mechanisms, regulations that we have to safeguard the environment are key, are efficient. And I feel in a country like Zambia, that does not happen. Through that, or protocol be highly observed. Now, panel, they've come here and they've mentioned so many statutes, but for the very fact that we've got so many statutes that work towards the environmental management of Zambia, but yet to Phyllis we do not see change, enough should be an indicator to say these mechanisms are not effective. Starting with affiliate we've got section 4 of the Management Act that talks about each and every single Zambian has the right to clean health. But affiliate do the people in Kabwe who stay in mine areas are able to access that right? Are they able to enjoy that right? Yet, members of the House, the right was enacted by the government. Affiliate it is sad to see that the enactors of the rights are actually the violators of that right. Affiliate not only that, they talked about how the current speaker talked about how the laws that they put have been improving. But members of the House, we've got statistics still of accepted. Affiliate the law clearly says to say each and every single Zambian has a right to clean health, clean water. Members of the House, if my rights of affiliate because of the miners and the emission of fossil fuels that they produce, that affects me and lead poisoning, isn't that not an infringement of my rights? Affiliate if the mines that are there still have spillages, such as in Mambeshi, she talked about Kasua, but affiliate even the same Kasua that they built did have a spillage. So yet affiliate whose right is being violated? The people who stay in those communities. Remember, panel, to say that it is the mines who have these villages. Why? Because of the weak enforcement laws that are there. Good Samaritan, please do as wise. Affiliate not only that, we talk about hydropower. Despite the current crisis that Zambia is facing about water depleted, we still see that there's an abuse, misuse of water. Affiliate talk about the emission of the fossil fuels that is there. You would think that in a crisis like this, we'll try to transition energy, but affiliate that has not happened. We still abuse water. We still misuse water. What does that mean? Even though it's depleting, affiliate it means that the emission of these fossil fuels are still more. Why, members of the House? Because of the poor mechanisms that have been set in place. Good Samaritan, do as wise. Members of the House, she talked about cases. The current speaker gave us cases to say in the course to say where people actually support their argument. But affiliate allow me to give them a case just because I'm a student. We talk about the case of Kapoto versus water resource management that clearly supports the laws to say that the laws that are there about water, members of the House, and preservation are just not good enough. The problem that we have is that much focus has been centered towards mines, but we neglect other areas that also contribute to this emission of fossil fuels. Affiliate how then is that effective? Good Samaritan, do as wise. Members of the House, because of the poor laws that we have, we see that there's an rapid increase of corruption. Now, I feel civilization. The biggest challenges, if you ask me with the minds, is say that we've got unnecessary stakeholders, members of the House. Even when these laws are being made, they first have to inquire how a particular stakeholder feels about this decision. But I feel civilization. The laws are made for the people in the rural areas, and yet the people who make the laws stay in two different areas. How then are they supposed to know what exactly is on the ground? Who are the laws supposed to benefit people? Who are the laws are supposed to benefit? It is the people who stay in those rural areas. I feel civilization. The current speaker also talked about how they've got these acts that are constantly waiting. But the civilization, the same acts that they give us also have contradictory provisions. For example, you have two acts such as Zema allowed. Panel. And this is the challenge that we have. We've got so many unnecessary stakeholders also in the law process. We're not against the stakeholders, but the challenge that we face with these stakeholders is that majority of them mainly want a source of income. Even when they're making these laws, when they're making the rules and the regulations of civilization, we see that their primary focus is on them. They first have to make the profit. So even laws that are supposed to benefit the Zambian people, we see that they end up benefiting them. Now, panel, I asked a question today. How many more lives need to be lost? How many more people need to suffer, all in the name of making an income because of the stakeholders? Affiliate association, certainly, that is something we need to look at. As I was saying about corruption, because of the poor laws that we have, we've got two agencies that can give you the same thing. We've got ZEMA and also the Ministry of Mines that literally have the same provisions, meaning that if you want a license from a mine and you're not happy with the decision that you got from ZEMA, you can simply go to the Ministry of Mines and you'll be able to acquire that. Affiliate association, too many loopholes, too many lacunas that we have in the law. Good Samaritan, do as wise. Also this. Okay. Affiliate civilization. If they say that the laws are airtight, then explain to me how the spillages keep on occurring over and over again. We've got Sinazongwe, we've got an article also that says to say spillages happen where mines did contaminate river. Members of the House, the end goal that they say that we should make profit from just because whatever is happening, we need to be aware and say, where truly does the focus lie? Who truly is supposed to benefit from these laws? Is it the miners of association? Is it the government or is it the people? Good Samaritan, do as wise. Now, panel, I have shown you evidence to say that the current mechanisms, the current laws, rules, and regulations that we have are just not it. Thank you very much. In conclusion, allow me to say this. When it pertains to the environment, each and every single citizen in Zambia has a mutual interest in this environment. And it is fundamental to say that the laws, rules, mechanisms that we have should be enough to safeguard the environment. And in a country like Zambia, that's just not it. I rest my case.
Wow, are we enjoying the point? Yeah. I feel for the judges. If I were a judge, I would be half-headed. Yeah. So in moving forward, we are on the third speakers. We just heard from UNZA's side. And so we go ahead with UNILUS, third speaker, correct? So okay. So third speaker, UNILUS, Chandamkulu Chireshe. Right? So when you are ready, give a cue to the timekeeper and we proceed. So when you want to interrupt, when I'm speaking, you feel free to interrupt. Okay, I know we've prepared slogans, eh? Should we take this time to hear the slogans before Chanda Mukulu comes? Yeah? No, huh? Okay, great. Okay, the floor is yours. Sorry, wait. I'm ready.
All protocols are duly observed to dignitaries of the highest order. Now, I stand in front of you today as the third speaker in proposition of the motion, Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental, regulatory, and legal frameworks. We expected a bit more substance from the non-affirmative side in truly addressing the crux of this motion. The first speaker of the non-affirmative erroneously stated, and he erred in law and fact when he stated that there are no regulations for restoration in acts of deforestation. However, he should have addressed his mind to Section 105 of the Environmental Management Act, which is highlighted there. In Section 105 of the Environmental Management Act, which gives the Director General the right to issue a restoration order to anyone who degrades the environment. Now, my speech is accepted. I'll talk about enforcement shortly. Now, my speech is going to be done in three different parts in order to address your concerns. I'll address the legal framework and how it is well defined, which their second speaker failed to do. I'll address the institutional framework, and I'll give practical examples and case studies in order to prove enforcement, in order for us to prove that the legal frameworks are actually strong. Now, contrary to what the non-affirmative might have said about certain legal gaps, the Environmental Management Act and other pieces of legislation are so comprehensive, as my first speaker defined, well defined to mean comprehensive, that they touch on all critical environmental areas. For example, Section 29 of the Environmental Management Act gives a mandate to conduct an environmental impact assessment for any project that might cause harm to the environment. You can't start a mine in this country without conducting an environmental impact assessment. Now, it is a clear jurisprudential principle that I think only the non-affirmative side are not privy to, that in order for a law to be effective, then it must come from a hierarchical authority, and that authority must be backed by sanctions. Now, I would have accepted their argument if they were to say that there is no enforcement because the law does not provide for sanctions. However, Section 117 of the Environmental Management Act makes it a crime in which you can be imprisoned. So I will not accept any arguments to say that a company could just pay off a hefty fine if they degrade the environment. You can be imprisoned for a period of up to 7 years if you degrade the environment. Now, the non-affirmative have provided the self-defeating argument in using the Sino Metals case in order to make their case. I'm going to give you practical evidence. I said that's the last part of my speech. So the non-affirmative may argue that enforcement is a challenge. They argue that enforcement is a challenge, and they keep using the Sino Metals case, which was which was unfortunate. Now, first of all, the Zambia Environmental Management Agency and the government acted immediately. Also, Sino Metals is being sued right now for that, and they paid $500,000 for it. So therefore, this is in line with one of the principles of the Rio Declaration, which enforced that the polluter must pay. Is this a reactionary principle? Yes, but our laws address all critical issues. Now, another practical example of how the law is enforced: the case of Moses Lukwanda versus Zambia Air Force. In this case, the court granted an injunction to the applicant on the basis that further construction on the catchment area would affect 30 to 40% of Lusaka's water supply. And the court granted this injunction in line with the precautionary principle, Principle 15 of the Rio Declaration, which states that further construction of anything that might cause damage to the environment would be stopped even when there is lack of scientific certainty. This is how well defined, how strong our laws are. We see them working even in our courts of law. And do you know that our courts of law, and do you know that our laws are so comprehensive and well defined that they give the public the right of the public to be informed? So we reject any arguments from the non-affirmative that might create a comparative analysis between Zambia and other jurisdictions, because that would be a flawed argument. Now, even for the sake of trying to accept the merits of this very flawed argument, let's look at the fact that Zambia has done everything in its power to ratify multiple international agreements. We have ratified and domesticated multiple international agreements. I'll give examples. The Aarhus Convention gives out the 3 pillars of public participation. We see this working in our Environmental Management Act. Section 91 of the Environmental Management Act gives the right of the public to be informed. The second speaker erroneously talked about how the public are not involved in this process. But however, Part 4 of the EMA gives a review process for environmental impact assessments. Do you know that every time there's an environmental impact assessment, it is published in the newspaper? Do you know that developers submit 12 copies of their environmental impact assessment? Do you know that copies will be placed in public buildings? So how is there no stakeholder engagement? How are the people not informed? If anything, Section 109 of the Environmental Management Act gives you, a public person, any person, a right to initiate prosecution against someone who you feel has damaged the environment. This is what you call a strong law. This is what you call a well-defined law. A law that touches on all critical environmental issues. With these few points, I rest my case.
Yeah. Right. That was the third speaker from UNILUS. And next up, we have the third speaker from UNZA. We can put our hands together for Divine Chorashi. So when ready, give the cue to the timekeepers.
Speech in 3, 2, 1. All protocol is observed. Panel, no one in our bench ever mentioned senior minings, but because you did, let me engage you on that. With the Good Samaritan, please submit this to the adjudicators. Now, panel, this is evidence that the day before yesterday, the United States of America withdrew all United States citizens as well as major stakeholders from Zambia because of the senior mining incident in Kitwe, because it was an environmental disaster. With the Good Samaritan, please submit this to the adjudicators. Now, panel, this is evidence that senior mining tailings them broke down, leading uranium and other toxic substances to fall into the rivers. Minerals and Resources Development Act. So what does this act say about inspection? It says the inspector can at any reasonable time go audit. Now here's the problem with that. It says any time. It does not give them a specific date, whether it should be annual or monthly or weekly. And that's problematic in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen, because any time can be between now and 5 years later. And that is what we see when we say it is not well defined. It is very problematic. I'll check you, Madam Speaker. All right,
Let us talk about what these management acts bring to us. These acts tell us what we must do and what we must not do. And something that tells you what you must do and what you must not do is a law. Now let me proceed. Now let us talk about what constitutes a legal framework. A legal framework constitutes of two things. That is the act, which I've talked to you about how they are flowed when it comes to inspections and how they tell an inspector to inspect at any time they want. And now let us talk about the social impact and the social branch of the legal framework. Now, ladies and gentlemen, rural populace are more disconnected from environmental law. They do not understand or know much about the Environmental Management Act and ZEMA and the environmental impact assessments. Ask a farmer in Lifanyama if he knows that it should be inspected before a mine is built near the homesteads. They do not know. May the good Samaritans please submit this to the adjudicators. Ladies and gentlemen, this is evidence that talks about how EMA should do consultations. What does it say about consultations? It says that the people in these rural places should be consulted, right? It says local leaders should be consulted. I'll take you. It says local leaders should be consulted. But what happens on the ground? We've got farmers in my kid who were never consulted when cement was laid down. We've got traditional leaders, chiefs, who are complaining about how they're not being consulted when their land is being used for these property development as well as mines. But the good Samaritan submit this to adjudicators, and I'll take self-governance point interjection. Hello. Right? Okay, I'll engage on that one in the next argument. And part of that is evidence I've just given you, where people in McKinney were complaining that they do not know. Now, let me continue. We're talking about lack of awareness and lack of sensitization, whereby ZEMA and other institutions, whether government or non-governmental, conduct these sensitization programs, mostly in rural areas. This debate right now is a sensitization program. And where is it happening? In Lusaka. What about people there in Fue, where there are mines that are happening? Those who are not aware or sensitized about these programs, and we see that as problematic. A legal framework is only as strong as people understanding how that framework works. And that is problematic in today's debate. I'll take you. Oh, you have two. Sorry. Let me proceed. Now, panel, let us talk about how legal resources are technically available but not necessarily accessible. Now, panel, how many people know about where to report, how about the legal proceedings, as well as where to find a lawyer? This information is not regularly available, especially for people in rural areas. And we see that as problematic in today's debate. Here's an evidence that the good Samaritan please submit this to adjudicators. This is evidence for Sinasongo, where houses are cracking, the air is being polluted, and people are asking for help. This problem started in 2015. It's been 10 years now, and the people in Sinasongo have not yet received that legal compensation. That is not because the law is not there. The law is there, but it's not being accessible to the people. And we see that problematic in today's debate. And we are saying the legal framework is not well defined. The legal framework is not strong enough because the people cannot accept it. Let us move on to why another reason we're saying the legal framework is not strong enough. And that is because people are not aware of their environmental rights. Of course, in primary and high schools, we learn about basic human rights like the right to education, the right to health, the right to autonomy. And now, environmental rights are a different case, ladies and gentlemen. People, and as a result, people's environmental rights are being infringed upon. Talk about the right to access to justice in environmental matters. The people in Sinasongo never received that justice to date. That right has been infringed on. Talk about the right to participate in environmental decision making. And the people in McKinney who have complained about not being informed about cement or those developments in their area, which is a right being infringed upon them. So that goes on to show you that the legal framework is not well defined because the legal framework that is supposed to govern the lives of those people is not accessible to those people, and you see that problematic in today's debate. Now, today's motion has got two aspects. It's got the legal framework, which talks about the formulation, which side government has been supporting in today's debate, but also the regulatory part, which is the implementation aspect of it, which we are telling you that the implementation is far different. What is on paper and what is happening in reality are two different cases, ladies and gentlemen. Let us talk about, first of all, how ZEMA conducts environmental impact assessments. So the member of government comes here and tells us, no, environmental impact assessments are conducted first before we have anything done on those lands. Yes, they are. And now let us tell you something. There was a case where Mwendosi Mine wanted to start a mine in a wildlife resort in North Zambia National Park, right? What did Zema say? Zema said, no, you can't start a mine here. What did they do? They wrote to a minister. What did that minister say? Approve their license. And the Samaritan said, please give this to a judges. And Mwendosi Mine is happening right now in the North Zambia National Park. Of course, it was halted, but to hold something means to still continue. And that is problematic in today's debate. And what I show you that this motion is indeed fraud. Let us also talk about the issue of the laws, where I talked about how people should be consulted and people are not consulted. In the papers, it says yes, people should be consulted. But what is happening in reality? People are not being consulted. Let us also talk about evidence number 9. These articles, the Environmental Management Act and whatnot, talk about how EMA can penalize people. So government comes in and tells us, no, EMA is able to penalize people. No, we've got these laws that have been set into place. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us talk about how ZEMA failed to enact the polluters pay penalty on Rukana Water and Sewage Company. Ladies and gentlemen, the Good Samaritans, please submit this to judges. They talk about Zema failed to enact this penalty pay on this company because of lack of funding, because of lack of staff. And that's why we come to show you in today's debate that the legal framework and regulatory framework is flawed because the body that is supposed to enact these laws is unable to enact these laws in this house. And as a result, we are having the problems we are having in today's debate. The status quo is very problematic in today's debate, and if we are to follow side government's fantasy, we will not come to the solution of the problems we're having in today's debate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a legal and regulatory framework is well defined and strong if it executes its intended purpose and does its job effectively. But what is happening right now? We've got senior minds. What is happening now? We're seeing as well when the air is polluted, the water is polluted, houses are cracking, and as a result, we're coming to you to tell you that this legal framework, this regulatory framework is not well defined because it does not execute its duty effectively and efficiently. With this, we've never been proud to oppose the motion at hand.
Good? That's good. Okay. Now the slogans have begun when we're just about to end. You missed your chance. You'd have heard the slogans from the beginning. They're coming. Okay. Okay. We can see the heat. Huh? It's making sense for everyone, isn't it? So that was UNZA Divine, third speaker, and now we have we go to the final round, isn't it? The summarizers, and just as a reminder for the summarizers, unfortunately, no points of information. So you've exhausted all your points of information, right? So we begin with UNILUS summarizer, who's the fourth speaker, Kakwesi Gausi. When ready, give a cue to the timekeepers. Water. Yeah.
Right. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the House of Debate, today I'll be summarizing a comprehensive argument on the part of the affirmative side of the debate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my argument will be provided in 3 parts. Firstly, I'll talk on how it is well defined, how it is strong, and lastly, how public participation has been part of the framework. Ladies and gentlemen, before I even go forward, I would just like to show the comprehensiveness that the first speaker had brought forward. When we say comprehensive, ladies and gentlemen, we're not just talking about the fact that the laws are there, but we're saying that the laws are there and they affect every single part of the environment. How do we see this? With the fact that we've got laws on water, with the Water Management Act, we've got laws on mines and minerals through the Mines Act, and various others such as the Wildlife Act, ladies and gentlemen. It is touching a comprehensive or a complete aspect of the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not even go far. Let's look at the Constitution itself. When we look at the Constitution, we notice through its articles 255 through to 257 that there is a consistency in the Constitution and that environmental sustainability is in fact constitutional, ladies and gentlemen. We look at the fact that there is even the Environmental Management Act, which doesn't just provide for environmental impact assessments and special impact assessments as per its articles 27 through 35, as well as its articles 23 and 7 through to 11.
Article 7 through to 11 provide what, ladies and gentlemen? Simple. They provide for Zambia's very own environmental management agency, ladies and gentlemen. Members of the House, I have brought out that it is comprehensive because it in fact shows out a whole aspect of the environment. It doesn't just speak on mines, but it speaks on water and forestry as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll move on to my next point, which is on strength, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to first and foremost just look at the aspect of accountability. I love that the opposition side brought out the Sino Metals case. You know why? Because it brings out the principle of polluter pays, ladies and gentlemen. Why am I talking about the polluter pays principle? It is something that is found in the legal and regulatory framework our state has. And we saw that in the Sino Metals case because they had paid a hefty fine. There was, in fact, compensation, ladies and gentlemen, because these laws must affect not just one aspect, which is before, but they must also affect after, as our third speaker brought out. We look at the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, ZEMA, as brought out by our second speaker, had carried out an annual report in the year 2022. And their annual report showed that they had a 92% conviction rate. That's an A+ in any university. When you look at the fact that this annual report, ladies and gentlemen, that brought out their 92% conviction rate, ladies and gentlemen, brought something interesting and fascinating to the table. And let's not forget that these laws are in fact adaptable because they are amendable to suit the change in times, as brought out by our second speaker. We've spoken time and time again about enforceability, but let's face the facts. Enforceability comes from sanctions. Oh wait, let's look at the acts and we'll notice that through sections 117 through 125 as provided by our third speaker, there are in fact sanctions, or in other words, penalties. Ladies and gentlemen, we look at the fact that in the case of Lukwanda versus ZA, that has been mentioned time and time again. We see that there was in fact an injunction against the appellant so that they may stop endangering the environment. And while we have noticed that the opposition side has brought out brilliant arguments in relation to public participation, we have to note that most of them were hypothetical and unsubstantiated, ladies and gentlemen. We have seen members of the public, in fact, bring cases forward. Have we not? Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the facts at hand. Public participation is in fact present, as brought out by the speaker before us. He had mentioned that the Aarhus Convention, which can be seen to have been enshrined in Zambia's laws, ladies and gentlemen, through public participation, is present. Let's not even go far. We've talked about the Constitution, we've talked about the Environmental Management Act, but let's look at something interesting. This concept trickles down all the way to the Forestry Act. Even in the Forestry Act itself, we see that it provides for community management groups. What are these? These are groups within small communities that can help take care of their environment, ladies and gentlemen. Just to ensure environmental sustainability, one, but also to ensure that they can benefit from this environment in a sustainable manner. We are stating that the framework is present, it is comprehensive, and it is well defined. What is strong if not enforceable, ladies and gentlemen? Let's look at the facts at hand. We have talked about how Zambia is in fact signatory to international agreements. What does this mean? We are even part of an international framework, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at the fact that in 2016, Zambia became signatory to the Paris Agreement. Why am I bringing this forward? To bring to light that in 2021, Zambia provided what is known as its nationally determined contributions. Now, why am I bringing this out? I'm bringing this out to show not only that there is policy, but that in 2021 as well, Zambia went and took an even bigger step forward by providing us with what is known as the Ministry of Green Economy, ladies and gentlemen, showing that not just the legislative body of government, but even its executive branch is taking a step forward to provide the enforceability and implementation capabilities. These nationally determined contributions weren't just left out on their own. In fact, in 2023, the state took a step forward to provide a framework for its implementation. Not only did we have the nationally determined contributions in 2021, but we had a framework of a way in which they will be carried out. Now, members of the House, as the proposing government, we have shown you that there is an existing framework. We have showed you that it is comprehensive, both in scope and content. We have showed you that there is access to justice. We have shown you that it is strong and enforceable. We have shown you that it is in fact transparent and has accountability, because we as the members of the public, ladies and gentlemen, are able to bring out a claim. This debate is personal, ladies and gentlemen, because it does not just affect the speakers here today, but it affects everyone here, ladies and gentlemen. We look at the fact that the opposition side had brought out many brilliant examples, but I fail to understand how a maybe scenario in which a minister maybe be bribed, which is just a hypothetical, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I rest my case.
Opposing team, University of Lusaka. And now we'll hear from the summarizer from the University of Zambia, Mr. Jacques Mwale. We can put our hands together. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So when ready, give a cue. Hello.
Our House of Intellectuals. The debate we have today is open to rational argument, which our government, of course, has failed to do. They define the motion by looking at the existing laws, which, of course, as opposition, we've not refused. These laws do exist, but the motion at hand is, are they well defined and strong? And they failed to give us evidence of how enforcement is done. Practical evidence is that the closing, of course, the government whip told us about the hypothetical example of corruption. 2023 CTPD released information to say that actually government officials do participate in mining activities, particularly concerning evaluations. Now, what is this debate really about? The fact that we're having this debate today simply shows us evidence that there's more to be done with our regulatory policies and laws. Of course, the claim that Zambia's legal environmental regulation systems are well defined and strong is by any means an overstatement. Allow me to mention this to you. First of all, there is weak enforcement. Sanctions that they have mentioned are only limited, and to some effect, actually, the reports show that actually these sanctions do not reflect the actual impact that they have on the environment. Side government mentioned to us the sanctions that ZEMA actually imposed, which is 500,000 to a company that was illegally destroying the environment. Do you know the actual cost of that pollution? It was 12 million. So why would you sanction someone 500,000 when the actual result is 12 million worth? This shows that there is definitely weak enforcement. In addition to that, the arguments that my team has brought up is the legal gaps that exist. You have two institutions. You have the Water Resource Management Act and you have the Environmental Management Act. Both of these in sanction penalties on anyone who pollutes the environment. But you know what's funny about them? The figures are different. So why does one article give you a different figure when the other says the other thing? This simply means if I'm a pollutant, I don't know which one to follow. And it's easy for me to say, if this one is hard, then I might as well go for the one that's relatively easier and then pay that figure. In addition to that, let's talk about ZEMA in itself. ZEMA in 2022 reported that actually it was underfunded. And to that extent, ZEMA itself does not carry out the environmental impact assessment, but otherwise allows the individual themselves or the business or the corporation themselves to hire an independent assessor to do the environmental impact assessment. You know what this simply means? It means that if I have a friend who does environmental impact assessment, I could simply pay them and they would certify me. And I would go to ZEMA and get the license instead. This simply means that there are flaws and loopholes in these systems. Now, our argument is not that these laws don't exist. Our argument is that these laws need consistent improvement. They are not well defined and they're definitely not strong. Let's talk about other aspects of course, environmental regulations. There's Department of Forestry, there's ZEMA 2011, there's Environmental Management Act 2022, there's Water Resource Management Act 2011, there's Environmental Investigation Agency Reports 2022, and there's also Natural Resources Act that was released in 1990 something. All these articles don't actually reflect the actual problems that we face in society. We still have deforestation taking place. Why do these institutions still exist, and why are the laws there and yet the results on the ground are different? Deforestation still happens in many of our communities. We have illegal charcoal burners. We have tree logging that still happens in the country. This shows that yes, the laws exist, but are they strong? Certainly not. If the impact is not seen, then this means that consistent improvement is needed. And what the government is proposing is a utopian world where these laws exist and everyone knows. But think of an average person. Which article do they know, and what number is it for them to access these laws? And in fact, if my right was violated, I would certainly know where to go because I'm educated. But think of my grandmother in the village. Where would she go if a mine decided to open up near her community? This is exactly what's been happening with the Kafue spill. When the Kafue was experiencing the water spill and poisoning, when Iteji itself experienced the fish poisoning, many of the people there didn't know where to report. Many people died because of that. This means that these laws are not well defined because people do not know them. So a well-defined law should provide clarity even for an average person. And this is what the government has failed to tell us. May the Good Samaritan pass this evidence concerning deforestation to the judges. House of Intellectuals. Senazongwe calls for help in 2021 because of mining and because the environment was not safe. Environmental impact assessments are not a guarantee that it's continuously possible for the place to be protected. This simply means that if a mine decides to open near a community, those people have to be relocated. But what if the people are not willing to cooperate? What the government does is fund them and help them to move out. But of course, people cannot do that simply. Can we blame it on the people's negligence if the government fails to enforce its laws? Certainly not. This simply means that the existing environmental laws actually require possible and strong enforcement, which the government claims that is done, but actually the results are very, very, very different. House of Intellectuals. Zambia Watchdog also acknowledges the existence of corruption in many existing institutions, especially mines. To what extent? This simply means that the perpetrators of any environmental disasters don't actually face the actual sanctions that they need. This means that it is possible for a perpetrator not to get charged for the problems that they actually face. Sanctions are not an equivalent of what is being done. What is written on paper is not what is being done on the ground. And this is our stand as team opposition. We acknowledge the existence of these laws, but we're also saying they are not well defined and are not strong. They need more enforcement and they need to be redefined and they need strong acknowledgement by the public. Evidence can be passed to the judges for all the points I've given. House of Intellectuals. The fact that we're having this debate today, Transparency International Zambia, CTPD, Center of Trade Policy, the government itself, this debate is evidence that more work needs to be done when it comes to environmental regulation, environmental policies, environmental rights. But if we go with team government, this will never be done because in their universe, the world's doing right. Thank you.
Okay, we have come to the almost end, almost end of the event. I think it was very interesting. I feel for the judges, honestly. I think this is very tough and difficult. However, from the guidelines I provided earlier, we've had all the 4 panelists from each institution present their arguments and speeches, correct? Yeah? Are we shy to even respond to me, surely? So, the final instruction was that we will allow for a rebuttal session only if both parties agree. If they want to have a maximum 5 minutes to have one from the team to have any last remarks to rebuttal. But if one of the teams decides not to go ahead, then we'll call the debate to an end and we'll allow the judges to deliberate. So allow me at this time. I don't know if do we have a DJ, someone that can play some very, very low music while I discuss with the panelists so we can reach a consensus whether we allow for that rebuttal or not. Is that fine? Okay. So allow me to take this time to speak independently with the panelists. So yeah, for now you can just yeah. So guys, what I guided is that if you have certain points that you feel you left out, choose one among yourselves to have 3 minutes uninterrupted to state your final comment, and they'll be part of the judgment. If you want, if you decide to decline it is your. Oh. Okay, so the panelists are deciding. We've given them 3 minutes to decide whether they want to have a final round of rebuttal of 3 minutes uninterrupted. And in 3 minutes, we will have a judgment to see whether we'll have the final round or we now leave everything in the hands of the judges. So both parties are discussing right now, and we will have a 5 minutes recess. So even for the audience, in case you want to use the restroom, feel free while the music is playing. After 5 minutes, I will get back to give you the verdict whether we will have the rebuttal session or we proceed with the judges. Thank you. Okay, so only 5 minutes. If you want to use the restroom, please feel free. You can walk around, but In 5 minutes, I'm coming to get the verdict. Yeah. Okay, so same applies. So in 5 minutes, I'll come and get the verdict. So if you want to move around, yeah, you can, maybe even if you want to consult her now, it's your chance because it's a free time. So you can consult. Yeah, you can consult, it's fine. Please feel free. Yeah. Our good Samaritan, in case they need you. Zach. Why are the restaurants? Hello? Hi, girl. Hi. Good going. Good going. Hello. Okay, so far? Okay. Thank you. You're doing a good job already. How you manage? You see how food works.
Yeah.
You manage to keep everyone very calm.
Yes.
The compartment, yes. Yes. Noisy. But then I say that when there's everyone is just
Corruption Perceptions Index, also known as the CPI, scores and ranks countries around the world based on how corrupt their public sector is perceived to be. The scores reflect the views of experts or surveys of business people, not the general public. We calculate the CPI using data from 13 different external sources. Transparency International is not involved in the production of any of these 13 datasets. The CPI includes data produced by the World Bank and the World Economic Forum, as well as by private risk and consulting companies and think tanks. Each of the 13 sources rates countries using its own scale. One source rates countries on a scale of 1 to 7, for instance, while another uses a scale of 1 to 100. As a result, direct comparison of country scores between different sources is not possible. Therefore, we transform each score from the original scale into standardized values that show the position of each country relative to others. By doing this, we are able to compare country scores across the 13 different data sources. After standardizing all scores, we then convert them into a scale from 0 to 100, which we use for the CPI. Next, we simply calculate the average of the transformed scores for each country. The average score is the CPI value for each country. In order to ensure reliability of the results, only countries with data from at least 3 sources are included in the CPI. The CPI results are comparable across time back to 2012. This is because when we convert the original data to the CPI scale, we take into account the 2012 parameters, which turns 2012 into the baseline year. Annual CPI results from before 2012 cannot be compared to other years. The 13 different data sources used to calculate the CPI all measure various aspects of corruption in the public sector. This ranges from bribery, the diversion of public funds, and the effective prosecution of corruption cases, to adequate legal frameworks, access to information, and legal protections for whistleblowers, journalists, and investigators. The CPI does not measure activities such as tax fraud, money laundering, financial secrecy, or illicit flows of money. Corruption generally involves illegal activities which are deliberately hidden and only come to light through scandals, investigations, or prosecutions. Researchers, civil society, and governments have made advances in measuring corruption in specific sectors. However, to date, there is no index which directly measures real levels of corruption in all its manifestations. The data sources that make up the CPI ask business executives and country experts questions which are based on carefully designed questionnaires. The CPI scores generally correlate with certain objective measures, including citizens' reported experience with bribery. To ensure that the CPI methodology and results are reliable, the index is regularly reviewed by independent evaluators. Such reviews have consistently shown that the CPI is statistically and conceptually coherent. Ultimately, the CPI is the most widely used corruption measurement indicator due to the wide global coverage, the increased reliability which comes with combining different sources, and the fact that it reconciles different points of view on what constitutes public sector corruption. For more information, please visit www.transparency.org/CPI.
Decentralization in Zambia. How well are we doing? In 2023, Zambia launched its revised National Decentralization Policy, a strategic framework for 2023 to 2027, designed to shift power from Lusaka to your district, your wards, and your communities. It sets out clear objectives, devolve functions, and resources to bring governance closer to the people. Why then is this so important for us Zambians? Decentralization isn't just bureaucracy. It's a transformational vision, responsive governance, inclusive development, transparency, and local economic growth. For Zambia, marked by an equal resource distribution, centralized systems, weak local governance, and persistent corruption, this shift is crucial. This is why TIZ teamed up with GIZ's ENACT project, funded
So the break was mainly for the panelists to decide whether they want to have a rebuttal round or not. And they had enough time to decide. And from our guidelines, we mentioned that if both want to go ahead, then we will go ahead. But if one or both decline, then our session ends here. So the verdict I have is that one has declined. Okay? And we are going to respect the decision. So this being said, it means we are now going to hand over everything to the judges. So beginning now, the judges are going to take a recess to deliberate on the results, and they will come to announce the results for the winners and the runner-ups. Fair enough? Okay. Yeah, so rules are rules, and we mentioned the rules earlier, and we have to respect the rules as they are. So the judges have begun deliberating as I'm talking. And just before we proceed, during the time as we are waiting for the judges to finalize on the winning team and not, I would like to now step out of my formal shoes as the chairperson for the debate and now speak to you as Ali from Center for Environment Justice. I want to encourage the panelists, both from UNILUS and from UNZA, and also the students that are the supporting team. I want to encourage us that the topic that we are dealing with is not easy. Even for the panelists, it wasn't easy. I think this is something they can attest to later on, maybe especially if you have friends who are part of the panelists. But then when you look at the motion we're dealing with, Zambia has a well-defined and strong environmental, regulatory, and legal framework. That's a very difficult motion. But then we've heard speeches from both the opposing side and the proposing side. And while the judges are deliberating, I want us to think about that motion. So you now, not as UNZA or as UNILUS, I want us to think of ourselves as citizens of Zambia. What is your take regarding this motion? So I will allow 2 people from UNZA and 2 people from UNILUS to just come and share their views. Your views are not to attack any side. Your view is your view as it is being live streamed. Decision makers are going to be hearing your voices. So for now, before we go into the next session, where you interact with Daliso. For now, just 4. I don't know if there are any. I'll just pick randomly. But from UNZA, I need 2. From UNILUS, I need 2. If you just want to say something towards the motion, please feel free. And of course, the session will be deliberated by Daliso. So let me just introduce Daliso. Daliso, please come in front. We can clap for Daliso. So Daliso is the youth and children programs coordinator from the Center for Environment Justice. She will explain further and she will deliberate while we wait for the final results. And while we wait for the final results, I urge all the panelists to remain seated and wait for the results to be announced. So for now, please feel free to interact with the result. Okay, I don't know if we need this.
You can go to one. Don't know.
Okay. I didn't hear the loud applause for that. Viva Mumadiva! Viva Mumadiva!
Okay. Done? Okay. I will ask her to help me. Do you mind? I think this one is fine because I'll need both. Do you mind helping me move around the mic for the conversation? Sure. Okay. Thank you. Good. Is it afternoon already? Good afternoon, powerful citizens of Zambia. Good afternoon. Thank you. So my name is Daliso Mvula, the Youth and Children Programs Coordinator at the Center for Environment Justice. And I am very thrilled to be here. And this is my first time visiting UNILUS. You guys have such an amazing and beautiful environment. And thank you very much for hosting us. We really, really appreciate. Thank you, Dean, for accommodating us. And to the powerful young people in this room, I'm pretty sure you've seen the critical issues that really came out during the debate. And beyond this just being a debate, it's also a platform for young people to express their voices. And I'm sure amongst one of the projects, you had the project called Voices for Just Climate Action. And now this is us putting out the amplifying aspect of voices of young people. This is just not one of those formal debates that we'll have, but these contributions that you're making are contributions that are going to be carried, put in a report, to be put out there. These are your voices, and your voices matter. Need I remind you, next year is 2026. So I think right now is a very good moment to start reflecting on what's been happening, about the policy implementation around environmental justice, about everything happening. I'll give you an example. I'll just give a brief example. Picture this. You live in Lufanyama, right? And you depend on the Kafue River. And now that water source has been polluted. Would you be comfortable? Okay, wait. How many people drink tap water in this room? Let's be very honest. Don't say all of us. Don't say all of us. Don't speak for everyone. How many people? I'm moving around the room. How many people drink tap water? For those that don't drink tap water, please give your reasons. I've seen one here. You can even, no, it's not even about being bougie. Please stand up. You can even stand up. Okay, we had the view from UNZA. The water doesn't look clean, taste clean, and and desert. Any UNILUS, why don't you drink tap water? She once had typhoid. So now picture this, you're drinking water that has heavy metals in it. Would you survive though? Back to our conversation anyways. That's just food for thought, by the way. It's just food for thought. It's food for thought. So as young people, based off what you've heard, based off the motion which is around policy implementation concerning environmental issues, to the students. Huh? Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know what he was whispering about, but I'm the saying. Yeah, so how do you feel about the current happenings and what is your opinion? What is your opinion about the implementation of environmental policies in Zambia? And maybe how do you feel certain things can be improved? Or do you feel confident? Please come through. I'm wearing heels, so I can't reach you. You're very far. Yes. How do you feel? Do you feel like, okay, things are okay or are good? Are there areas of improvement? And as young people, let me remind you, whatever decisions are being made today, you're going to be the parents. Your children are the ones that are going to be facing those consequences. You are going to be bearers of the torch of the decisions that are being made on your behalf today. So think about it critically.
Oh, so I'm directly looking at this thing. So my contribution shows. So looking at the motion, it's very important that all of us actually talk about the annexing. In my opinion, Zambia's environmental regulatory I think it's robust, but I don't think it's perfect. One of the things I was hoping about looking at the gap. So if you read out, like I'll do a record, you need to read the recognized. Right, that level is not on the floor. You don't have a very good example of really environment. And I think it's important that our own areas action. So the people are supposed to be part of that.
Oh, so you wanted to communicate something? Oh, okay.
Make sure that we have to make sure that people provide for environmental rights.
Okay. I'm just giving leading questions here. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. That is the voter next year. Yes, ma'am. Hi. Our beautiful good Samaritan. There's a hand that side.
No, no.
No, I'll call you just now. After the
Okay,
let me just
so
full chance. Okay. Mm. 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 Okay. Mm. Mm. Mm.
You can
Yeah.
summarize.
Okay. So in summary, what I wanted to say is that
Hey, it doesn't want. It just doesn't want.
Maybe it wants me to hold. Hey, let me hold.
So, in summary, I would just say that it's important that the laws that are being created are taught to us, even people who don't learn the law. And also, it's important that these things that they're doing should be shown to us to say, this is what we're actually doing. Be transparent, be accommodating to people who aren't acquainted, I guess. Be accountable. And I guess even including the youths to take action towards these things. I think it will help the government way more.
So, tell us. Oh, tell us.
So there's a lady there. Yes, there's a lady there.
Should I hold for you as well?
Try not to distract. Okay. Yeah, I was just checking the time. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so I completely agree with everything that has been talked about, accessibility and implementation of the laws. But I would like to commend both sides, the proposing and the opposing, for bringing to light that when we talk about a legal framework, we don't just mean legislation. So a legal framework is on all boards. It's not just legislation, but it's the executive, the judiciary, how each arm of government is dealing with these various issues. And I think going forward, since we are the youth and it's talking about youth voices, we have to learn that it shouldn't just be about the laws being comprehensive, but across the board, having the same level of commitment to these issues, and also the fact that we are learning law and we are primarily concerned with legislation. And I get that. It tends to blind us to think about, oh, there's this act or there's that act, but practically what is going down on the ground or what happens in real life is what we should be concerned about, and taking a step to be or taking the initiative to start even at a ground level. It can start with you and me going out to tell people, oh, did you know about this? Did you know that there's this alternative? Do you know you're not supposed to be doing that? Because a lot of these issues that we face environmentally are not just because of if anything, it's mainly because of pollution, and pollution is human cause. It's because of mankind going out, doing stuff, throwing rubbish and doing stuff like that. So starting from us and keeping in mind that we have to try and unify the way in which we do things and be committed in all like sectors of life.
Thank you very much. There was a okay. We have a gentleman there. We're about to wrap up.
Where?
The okay. He was first, the guy with the glasses. Oh my God, the one with the long sleeve shirt.
Okay, who will be the last one? That is good.
Thank you. Yeah, I was the first. Okay, so regarding the motion, I think my take home is this. Zambia has laws, yes, they are existing, they're paper, that's true. but we have a lot of decentralization when it comes to even how they're enforced. So we have EMA number 12 of what, 2011. So we've got those things written down that will be carried out by ZEMA. But then let's not forget that we have other agencies. For example, we've got Ministry of Mines, we've got the Ministry responsible for water, we've got the Ministry responsible for health. So all of these are people who, when something goes wrong in the environment, are going to have a say. So you find that on a panel that is discussing pollution in Kafue River or something, you're going to have 4 or 5 ministers sitting. You're going to have a delegation from ZEMA. You're going to have a delegation from DMMU. To make things worse, you're also going to have a delegation from Zambia National Service. So I think there's too much decentralization when it comes to enforcing of these laws. And as such, we don't have a concrete pathway to take because ZNS wants to go a certain direction, ZEMA wants to go a certain direction. Then something that makes it even more worse is the fact that when we look at majority of these organizations or these institutions that have been mandated to take care of our environment, like WORKS or ZEMA, we find that the role they play is basically to advise. So, for example, ZEMA is going to write to say, okay, this is the situation in Kafue River, this is the situation in Kafubu, or whatever the case. But that, if it goes to a relevant ministry, they can easily say, no, thank you, we have a different direction to take. So, it's not necessarily that they've got power to enforce certain things. So, yeah, on paper, sure, that's there. But then in reality, they don't have the capacity to go ahead and enforce certain laws. So we're going to have too many people having a say. Then on
20 seconds left.
Thank you very much. Then on the Sino case as well, I would like to mention that the actual figure as released by the Ministry of Information was 1.5 million and not 500,000. Then the other thing is...
this one is a debate. Why weren't you on the panel?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So the other thing is on the comprehensiveness of the law that we have to guide environmental protection. The reality of the situation is that as much as we do have this law that is supposed to guide, it is not comprehensive. Comprehensive should mean it tackles every single area from start to end. So you've written down what must be done and what must not be done. You have not written down who's going to take care of what, how it's going to affect you. When it comes to compensation, for example, in Azom, we've been waiting for 10 years to receive compensation from government. So,
time up.
But those are different all the time. So please, less than 1 minute. That is just one.
Half a minute. Half a minute,
yeah.
please.
That's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Okay. So my point, I think, is just an addition of what they have already said, but mine is more focused on let the community get involved. What do I mean by getting the community involved? I can give an example of Mfue National Park. You have people that actually live there, people that have been there their whole entire life. They constantly see the changes that happen either due to climate change, due to pollution, and due to tourism, let's say living trash or whatever it is. Those are small environmental effects that are there. If you are able to talk to those individual community people by creating conservancies and constituencies that are able to actually govern the people, guide the people, and tell you if you are seeing this, this is who you report to, this is how you deal with it. How do those independent bodies actually come about? Then us constantly getting people from the United States, from the UN, to come educate our own people on what they are supposed to know. Let's actually decentralize these concepts and go to the ground. What are you supposed to know? And to give one of the best examples, we did a trip with my school where we went to Mfue. That trip was pushed by one of the students that was funded by a project within Mfue that is empowering their own people, funded from primary school till universities. He's a doctor now, whereby you are actually empowered to know what's happening in your own community. She loved it so much that she had to call the whole entire school to be taken to Mfue to see what's happening on the ground, what's actually happening. So if you are able to actually involve your own community people, that is the biggest power you can actually give to the people to actually know where they stand and what to do at the end of the day.
Thank you very, very much. I'm pretty sure we have a lot more opinions. And I will stand at the podium because this is serious business. And this is a call to action to each and every one of us in this room, especially the young people present in this room. It is our responsibility to stand for environmental justice. It is our responsibility as young people to take action and ensure that our policymakers implement what they're supposed to implement. It is also critically our responsibility as young people to be informed about these issues. I think if we can spend 2 hours straight on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I'm pretty sure we can spend time researching about these issues. And I'm glad that a number of you are in this room. But what's important is, what are you going to do when you leave this room? Remember, just because it's not happening to you, it doesn't mean it can't happen to you. This is the future we're talking about. And when it comes to environmental issues, we're not just looking at deforestation, we're not just looking at pollution, but we're looking at a holistic perspective, which is the economic sector, political sector, social sector, and the natural environment itself. So that is something that should stick at the back of your head. You cannot remove yourself from the environment. It is where you get your benefits from. All the ecological benefits, your fresh air, your food, your water. And this is why it's important that we take care of it, because we're not just looking at the generation today, but we are looking at the future generation as well. They need a fair share of the good things we've tasted. Already, we've transitioned into buying water to drink. In the future, we risk transitioning into buying oxygen tanks to just breathe proper fresh air. And we don't want to see such an environment. And this is why, as young people, we should amplify our action, we should amplify our voices into strengthening environmental rights. And as the Center for Environment Justice, we are doing something, and I expect especially you, the law students, we are advocating for the establishment of an environmental court in Zambia, so that environmental crimes can be heard within Zambia. Because as you are aware, we have no environmental court. So anything that has to do with environmental crimes is usually heard from outside the country. We expect to hear your voice and your support. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we are at a point which is very critical. Without any, are we ready for the result? Or do we want to each take the result?
Let's take it out.
We are anxious. Okay, so we don't want to waste time. I'll invite our panel of judges to come in front, so we introduce the judges so you know where the judging is coming from, and they will deliberate on the results. But after the results, please don't leave the auditorium, as we still need, and also we have some very nice lunch, right? At least yeah. So just to emphasize also, it's not about losing and winning. Just keep in mind that your contributions, both teams, right? UNZA and UNILUS, whoever wins, whoever loses, we're not looking at it as losing. We are looking at the winners and the runner-ups, because this topic is very critical and your submissions are very valuable, both teams. At least we can agree on that, isn't it? However, we only have one winner, one emerging winner, right? So are we set to have our judges come and tell us the results? Are we sure? People are not answering. I don't know. So now I don't know whether people are angry or they just want. Am I allowed to bring the panel of judges in front? Yes? I'm only hearing from this side. From this side, what UNZA? UNILUS. Are we ready to listen to the panel of judges results? Okay, so shall we put our hands together as we call the panel of judges to just stand in front? Okay, perhaps they can maybe just here so that everyone can see you just in front of the podium. Okay, so before the final announcement is done, I think Madam Nganji can be at the far end. So she's the head judge. So she when the microphone reaches her, we know it's dangerous, all right? So we will request the judges to introduce themselves and where they're coming from so that you understand the caliber of the what we are judging in the debate. That's fair enough. So we will begin with the first judge. Please introduce yourself, your institution, and in case you have any words.
Good afternoon, everyone. My results, everyone. I'm again Dr. Sue. All right, thank you. So Publish What You Pay is an institution that is, one, trying to have a unified voice from the civil society so that whatever TIZ is saying is the same thing that CJ is saying, it's the same thing that NGOCC is saying, instead of the government saying your other colleagues came and told us this, and then you are here with another information. So Publish What You Pay is trying to have a unified voice, but then also apart from that, we do checks and balances. We are just coming from a debate where others were quoting a different figure from Sinometals, and then we have another department. So when we ask Sinometals, how much did you pay? Publish what you pay. So that is basically that what we do at I Publish What You Pay. But then apart from that, I'm an environmentalist myself, policy in the policy sector. We're trying to analyze the policies and some of the laws that have been brought forward. It's amazing to see the research that was done, and I say kudos to everyone. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Visa Bukuka. I'm coming from Zambia Institute of Environmental Management. I'm coming from Zambia Institute of Environmental Management, an institution that looks at the management of the environment. When we look at the environment, we are talking about water, we are talking about land, and we are talking about the air. And also to capacity building, individuals and organizations and the community that are living in communities where there are mining activities.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Patrick Chitabuzulu. I'm a legal counsel for Zambian Institute of Environmental Management. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, I think some of the comments the chief judge will make. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Zanji Sinkawa. I work for Transparency International Zambia, the communications officer. I'm actually an investigative journalist by profession. So it was interesting to see some of the things that were being brought forward here. So before I get into the results, I thought of giving some comments, in fact, that also some of the judges were highlighting, and I'll give feedback on each group. So I'll start with the proposing group. It was very commendable, the evidence that they had. So the legislation, the laws that they were quoting, the evidence was strong, very good. Whereas with the opposing group, there wasn't much, we expected to see you highlight the legal gaps because they were giving the legal perspective or position. So it was good to see where those gaps are, where the gaps are in the legislation and what needs to be brought forward for it to be a stronger framework, legal framework. Otherwise, you had more human evidence, which is good because you can't just have legislation. It would remain theoretical. So if you just have laws that are there, but you don't have any examples, it's not as effective as well. So you see, I'm trying to give a balance here. So they had more evidence, but not much open source data, which is, the legislation, the facts. Whereas they had more legislation, but not much evidence, not much human evidence to back your facts, your legislation. Another thing that we had also discovered was that, in fact, let me just start by saying this. When it comes to debating, make sure you have accurate figures. Because, the people who are judging, we literally work in this field. So now, if you don't, if you don't have accurate figures on some of the issues, we'll know, we'll flag them. And I'll give a prime example, the Sinomekel's issue. So I think it should have been group one who started by saying it was about $500,000, which is, I think, the kwacha equivalent is about 11 or 12 million kwacha. And when they said this, group two also carried it. And this figure is wrong. The compensation amount was 16.2 million kwacha. So it's very important to have the accurate figures. That's on Sino Metals. Another issue was on the Mukula case. So group one had presented that as evidence. And if you remember, right at the end, I asked for that evidence again. Because you cited it as evidence with regards to how punitive measures are put in place, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But there have been no convictions pertaining to the Mpula case. There have been no punitive measures put on perpetrators pertaining to the Mukula case. The only court case that was there was because a minister, in fact, two ministers in the PF government, had sued for defamation. They sued News Diggers, a media house, for defamation. That's the only reason why it went to court, not because perpetrators were actually held accountable. So again, that was a bit inaccurate. But I thought of flagging that. Then coming to now updated information, it's also very good to use updated information when you're debating. And in this case, both of you teams actually used an outdated, a repealed Minerals Act, Mines and Minerals Act. It was repealed last year. So there's a new act. It's called the Minerals Regulations Commission Act. That's the new one. But both of you rode with that repealed one. So very important, again, just something to take into consideration in your next debate sessions. Having said this, I'm now going to come to the results. So ironically, it was very, very, very close. It was a close one, ironically. Okay, so I've actually been advised to start with the speakers first before the main results. And I'll start with the second speaker, the second best speaker. So this is Chandamukulu Chileshe. Would also like to call upon Madam Teresa to just join the judges in front. Madam Teresa. Okay, so now we're going to get to the best speaker. So the best, and by the way,
How this was decided for both best, the best and the second best was who had the majority votes in terms of best and second. So who was the common one among the judges, and who was the least common and so forth. So now the best speaker, who was common among all the judges, was Jackie Small. Okay, thank you very much. So now we come to the final results. And there was only a difference of 1 point. That's why I mentioned it was ironic. Because we had to add, so we added the points from each judge. So it's not a matter of maybe someone feeling like this school deserved it most, no. So it was just an addition of points based on how the judges had scored the speakers. So the speakers were the ones who determined the points for their university. The second best, let me say the runner-up, was UNILUS with 990. And the winners of the environmental justice debate were UNZA with 991. There are no winners or losers. This was very competitive. We enjoyed the debate, we enjoyed the discussions. They are both very intellectual and very intelligent speakers from the teams, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Okay. So we've heard the results. We've heard the results. I would just ask the panelists to come and join, and including our guest of honor. So, Zaran. Yes, for photos, and as well as Puyo from UVOS, and the head of department School of Law to just join us. It wasn't easy, and you can see 1 point, 1 point, by 1 point. Okay.
We have time to bring chairs. Bring chairs to the judges.
Okay. It seems we've all accepted the results, huh? It was very difficult, very tough, right? Very difficult. Yeah, so while we are setting up, let me just mention that this is a debate series. We actually had the same event in the Copper Belt, where we had CBU versus Mukuba University, and Mukuba University won the round. So they will be coming to face UNZA next week in the finals. So the finals will be when? Finals will be next week, So to UNILUS, I also want to mention that for next week, through the executive team, a number of you are invited to be part of the event next week at the Urban Hotel on Friday for the final. So that means it's what UNZA versus Mukuba. Yeah, so to be UNZA versus Mukuba, but at least UNILUS can still support the Lusaka team, right? Okay. Okay, so meet the media team just for the photos. We can take photos. Okay, so we can also have the debaters along with the deputy dean, the debaters both ends with the deputy dean. Sure. Sure. Don't want to sit, guys. It's a rare opportunity. Uh, But ladies and gentlemen, you can agree with me that this was fantastic. It was very difficult. Eh? Yeah. So are we ready to support UNZA as the Lusaka team for next? Because it's like Lusaka